Hello and welcome to episode 91 of Mark Talks About His Things. And today, the more observant of you will notice that I generally tend to have a thematically appropriate bit of leisure wear. I'm wearing a New Order t-shirt with the logo Apollo 16 on it. And that means that today I'm going to be talking about New Order in the aftermath of the Republic album through and up to the beginning of the Get Ready period. And for those of you who are particularly observant, today is the 3rd of May 2021, which, as I understand it, makes this record 28 years old, which makes me feel both very, very lucky, very old, and also not quite old enough. I've always felt that I should have been born probably about 10 years earlier, and then I could have seen the bands that I love come to fruition as a teenager. So, I could have got into Joy Division in 1980, and I could have possibly maybe even seen their last show, which I think also happened 41 years ago today. Although I would have been a 16-year-old and I would have been sneaking into the gig pretending to be older. Honestly, this is my leather jacket. It's not my dad's leather jacket, and I'm honestly old enough to go and see Joy Division, sir. That kind of thing. Which obviously didn't happen. So today, talking through, and there are big pile of CDs down here. In fact, if I was to pick them all up, you'd be like, my God, man, you can't get through these fast enough. But I'm going to show you exactly how many I have got here. This is all the CDs by New Order and all the solo projects between the end of the Republic period and the start of Get Ready in the beginning of the year 2001. Very, very busy period, but also at the same time absolutely barren in many ways. So quickly kind of just laying out the lay of the land is, let's say we'll start at the beginning of 1994. And New Order have split. London Records have paid them an advance of £1 million, and they've done videos which cost £300,000 each. They've invested an enormous amount of money in this band, and this band have ceased to exist. And London Records, probably quite rightly, are wondering, well, how are we going to get the money back now? That's offset against royalties, which may not necessarily have happened. And so there's some questions around, well, what are we going to do to make a bit of money? And of course, when that happens, your simple and easy answer is to release a greatest hits album. And that's exactly where we went next. So let's take it to the end of 1993, and so there is no New Order. Peter Hook is recording with Killing Joke, and he's also in a band called Hooky and the Boys that appear on Mrs. Merton's TV show. Not that I knew, because I never watched it. Bernard Sumner has flexed back to working with Johnny Marr in electronic, and Gillian and Stephen are just wrapping up the last part of the Other Two and You album campaign, which was very short because they weren't going to be playing live. And I think the other thing is, it was really difficult to be a fan of New Order and a lot of their peers and contemporaries at this point in time. Depeche Mode had descended into some kind of drug-fueled madness shortly to split. The Cure were down 2 men and effectively were Robert Smith, Simon Gallup and Perry Beaumont. The Wonder Stuff had split up, and New Order were inactive. It really felt like there was a changing of the guard in terms of the culture and the times. And not only that, that period also reflected the rise of Britpop, so the rise of Oasis, Blur, Suede, although they aren't Britpop, Pulp, although they aren't Britpop, other bands with better suits than they have songs, and bigger tailing bills, and they spend more time picking out a jacket than they do picking out a guitar riff. Yes, menswear, I am talking about you. And so it was a very dark time, actually, to be a fan of New Order, because it went very quiet, and there wasn't really very much that we knew what was going to go on. There were some rumblings coming out from the lab that something was happening. But what was happening, as I've mentioned before, was the release of a Greatest Hits album. And the first thing to come out from the Greatest Hits album was a remixed, slightly re-recorded, reprogrammed, generally rethought version of True Faith. here is a promotional 12-inch of True Faith, which came in a die-cut sleeve. And since obviously it was a promotional 12-inch and no one paid a huge amount of attention to it, the sleeve did tear here. But this just looks gorgeous, and I mean, I just love it as a bit of graphic art, as a design for a cover. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a promo 12-inch, and you don't know what it is. It's got no identifying text on the outside. It's got a question mark, which hadn't been linked to the band previously. And in fact, the question mark is when you take out the sleeve, you end up with that. So what is this? Well, this is the promotional 12-inch of the Perfecto mix of True Faith. So that's been remixed by Paul Oakenfold, and there is a couple of remixes on here, and also a remix by Bernard Sumner, which is called True Faith 1994. And as I understand it, True Faith 94 has maybe a new vocal track. It's maybe got a couple of guitar overdubs, maybe been reprogrammed a little bit, new rhythms on it, but nothing too exciting, nothing too exciting at all. And that then came out as a CD single that had an adapted version of the original iconic True Faith imagery, and was backed with a number of remixes, which is pretty much the go-to position for them. So there's 2 remixes of True Faith. There's a radio edit and a 12-inch mix. There's a radio edit and a 12-inch mix of the Perfecto mix, which is vocal, and then there's the Trannies with Attitude Grim Up North mix, which most closely resembles the original 1987 single. I never heard this mix of the track played out, so clearly remix culture perhaps wasn't quite where it should be. And as Stephen Morris says in his book, he says, well, I'm not really a huge fan of best of albums, but I cash the check, so I shouldn't really complain. And that's understandable, because I think all of the members of the band kind of had sort of a bit of a crisis of confidence around this point, because it was the second time the band split up, but also it was the first time that the band felt that maybe they were starting to fall out of the game, starting to, if you're relying on hits and relying on being successful and that type of thing, you've got an idea that when you get a record, it's going to get in at number 1. If you go and play a certain venue, it's going to sell out. If you're Madonna, you think, well, I can do a 5-song PA at Brixton Academy, and I can charge people 25 quid for a 25-minute show, which I think is, ridiculous, really. But that's the type of world that they live in, and in order to get a cachet of being cool and hip, it sells out pretty quickly. Now, I've remembered a couple of extra things which I need to pause this and come back to it for, because I've left them on shelves, but I will show them to you because they are worth it. Right, I've picked those up. So following on, hot on the heels of True Faith, came the second compilation album in pretty much as many studio albums, and it is the Best of New Order. It was released in 2 different configurations. The European version has a very different track listing to the American version, and the American version has a song off each of the studio albums, plus a number of extra tracks on it. The European version has basically all of the hits in a somewhat random order, and it also has some remixes and some re-recordings on there, because that is how New Order work. Now, the first thing we've got to do is to mention that the cover has a question mark on it, because it's not exactly sure if there is a New Order anymore. And I think that this is an adaptation of the original Blue Blob, which can be seen on the Substance CD here, has been squashed. It's a deliberate reason that the blue is the same, is to kind of act as almost a kind of like a thematic sequel to Substance, but also to put a question mark over it to say, well, firstly, is this the Best of New Order? Because doing a best of album and calling it the Best of New Order isn't very New Ordery, is it? And then the second one is there's not even a certainty that there is a band. So the European version of the Best of New Order was released in late 1994, and it had remixes on of True Faith, a re-edit of 1963, a remix of Round and Round, and it had a remix of Bizarre Love Triangle. Now, the remix of Bizarre Love Triangle on the Best of New Order is only on the European edition of the album, and it isn't really a 1994 remix. It's an unused alternate 7-inch mix by Stephen Hague, which was released on a Factory Records cassette in 1991 and was completed in 1986 and not used. I think it may have been mispressed and put on a Canadian 7-inch, but aside from that, it wasn't the version that was meant to be released. The American version of the Best of New Order came out in, I think, February 1995, and it had a very different track listing. So it had one track from each of the studio albums. It had the remix of True Faith, 94. It had a new remix of 1963 by Arthur Baker and Bernard Sumner, called 1963-95, that contained huge amounts of new programming and keyboard lines. It had bass outtakes that had been used, and also pre-programmed bass had been changed on it. It may have been resung. Dramatically different mix of the track. And Stephen and Gillian were less than pleased, because they said, well, we hadn't even been consulted or asked about if we wanted to do any of these remixes. They'd been kind of presented by the record company, with Arthur Baker and Bernard working on them separately. So very clearly, perhaps the band weren't necessarily on the best of speaking terms. So much so, and Stephen was so annoyed that he bought a tank, and then he pointed its now decommissioned gun barrel at Bernard's house. And I'm sure he says that in the book as well. The American version features Round and Round 94, which is very slightly different from the original Round and Round. It uses some of the slightly different bass lines and things that were used on the 7-inch mix. Has a slightly different ending and has the same intro as the 7-inch. And it's got True Faith 94, which, as I've said, is barely detectable. Effectively, they've said they've remixed the tracks in order to get you to buy this greatest hits album. It's not necessarily worth it. Although it did give us one of the world's best New Order collectibles, this tile puzzle here, which I have had on my shelf for a number of years, with the cover of the album on, and you can kind of move it all around. I'm not sure it was worth the £10 I paid for it. Probably worth a bit more than that now. I don't particularly care. It's just a silly little gimmick, and isn't that the story of many bands' careers? So on the second single to come from the best of comes this little beauty. This again is a die-cut promotional 12-inch sleeve for the remix of 1963. And again, you take it out and you've got the cover on there, and you've got a promotional 2-track 12-inch featuring the Joey T Vanilli Dubby mix, which has no vocals and sounds nothing like New Order, and the Joey T Vanilli Light mix, which has some vocals and sounds a heck of a lot more like New Order. But what had happened now, and this is often the problem with remix culture around about this time, is that bands would just shove any old crappy remixes. They'd pay somebody to do a remix, and if it didn't sound like them, it didn't matter anyway. It was going on the bloody single. Now there's a commercially released 12-inch of 1963, which has both the Dubby and Vanilli Light mixes. It's got the Lion Rock Full Throttle mix and the Lion Rock M6 Sunday Morning mix. Again, they have no resemblance to the band whatsoever, apart from possibly having the band's name on the label. They are crap, and you don't need to buy them, which is good, because you probably haven't. There was also this lovely CD single in a box, which you opened up using the promotional artwork there. Had a nice blue sleeve, and then you kind of opened it out, and there's a CD single that's inside there. And this CD single, this CD is worth buying, by the way, because it has the American LP version of 1963-95 that, as I said, is substantially re-recorded, remixed, new bass, new drums, new keyboard lines, new guitar, new vocals, almost completely re-recorded. It's also got a track called Let's Go, and Let's Go is an instrumental demo that originally appeared on the soundtrack to this album, Salvation, in 1987. A vocal version of Let's Go was recorded in 1985 for Low Life, but it was shoved off at the last minute and replaced with a remix of The Perfect Kiss. This version of Let's Go takes the original studio recording, spruces it back up, adds some extra bass onto there. Effectively, I think maybe Bernard had played bass in a way that sounded like Peter Hook. I'm not quite sure, and added new vocals to it. So it's a brand new Order song, although it's also partially pretty much a solo project. But this is the one to get it on, and if you can't get this, get the American version of that, and you've got a brand new and pretty rare New Order song called Let's Go, Nothing For Me. Which is pretty good. It's the UK CD single of 1963 also features the previously unreleased in the UK Night Tripper mix of Spooky, and the much sought after Shep Pettibone 12-inch remix of True Faith from the True Faith remix 12-inch, which this is its first appearance on the CD. Again, don't know where you'll be able to find it. In the US, Let's Go, Nothing For Me got its very own CD single, and this is a promotional one-track CD of the track there. In a lovely sleeve. Again, I have no memory of buying this. I used to go to record fairs every month when I first started working, and I was like, well, all I have to do is pay my rent, so I might as well buy records that I've always wanted throughout all of my life that I'm now able to afford. If you're starting buying new order stuff now, really expensive, I recommend you don't do it. Here's the CD single of 1963, which features the radio remix, the 94 album version, the Line Rock Full Throttle mix, and the Joey T Vanilli dubbing mix. Again, not particularly good. Don't invest time or money in those. And of course, to try and get some more money out of the band, they then also released in 1995 Blue Monday 95, another set of non-contemporaneous remixes by third parties that in many cases barely has any resemblance to the original track. So there's the UK CD single here, which has the Hard Floor mix, the original mix, a Manuela mix, an Andrea mix, and a Plutone mix, whatever those are. I have no memory of those whatsoever. This one differs in one respect because it's got the brain mix, and the brain mix of Blue Monday features the alternate vocal that was used for the Sunkissed advert when they recorded an advert for Sunkissed. You can also get the 12-inch here, which is called Blur Montag, and again features a variation of remixes. So yes, New Order, flogging a dead horse, as the Sex Pistols may have had it, but of course they're nowhere near finished. There's plenty of juice to be squeezed out of an empty carton, because here is the rest of New Order, the 1995 remix album that features nothing but brand new remixes of old New Order songs. So it's got the 4 remixes of Regret, Ruined in a Day, Spooky, and World. And then it's got 6 new remixes from the band's back catalogue before the master tapes finally disintegrated. So it's got new versions of Confusion, Touched by the Hand of God, Bizarre Love Triangle, Age of Consent, and it's got the original Shep Pettibone mix of True Faith, which clearly was such a big hit when they did the 1963 box set that they decided to release it again on CD. Let's be clear about it, the new remixes are awful and you do not need them. The pump panel reconstruction mix of Confusion is apparently a classic. It features in the soundtrack to the film Blade 2. That famous nightclub scene with that banging riff that everyone talks about, and so therefore it's worth a fortune. But aside from that, it's awful. I think the Bizarre Love Triangle Armand Van Helden mix is possibly the worst New Order remix of all time, and that means, yes, reggae remixes of Ruined in a Day, you are no longer the worst New Order remixes that ever happened. There's also I think the Biff and Memphis remix of Touched by the Hand of God is okay, and the Howie B remix of Age of Consent is okay, but certainly I wouldn't go any further than that. By the way, the first editions of the Best of New Order feature a different second CD with nothing. Oh, by the way, you can see my curtains there. Nothing but remixes of Blue Monday on, featuring all the mixes that are on the various CD singles internationally, with a new mix, the Star Wash mix. Can't remember it, never heard it. Still, where there's a will, there's a way, and there's a double LP version of the rest of New Order. There was a vinyl version of the Best of New Order. I didn't buy it because I had everything on 7-inch singles. Now it's staggeringly expensive and never been reissued. Here is the vinyl edition of the rest of New Order, which effectively is just a glorified double 12-inch, and that features a number of extra mixes. So it's all new mixes on this, including a couple of vinyl exclusives, a Dave Clark mix of Everything's Gone Green, and a CJ Bolland mix of Temptation. They're really bad. Do not pay big money for them. They are awful. They have no resemblance. And despite me paying something like £6.99 for this, which is probably 20 times that now on Discogs, I felt cheated at £6.99, and I'm not the only person who did. Of course, that wasn't all the remixes. There was a remix of World in Motion by LFO that is on a football compilation LP somewhere up there that I can't be bothered to dig out. And the pump panel remixes of Confusion got a separate CD and 12-inch release. So I bought it because, hey, it's New Order remixes. Even if it's New Order remixes, I gotta have them all. It's like an indie Pikachu with drum machines. And the pump panel remixes on here, alongside a pump panel flotation mix, which is far more ambient, and a pump panel track called Remover, which I have no memory of and will never listen to. Um, Unused versions of Everything's Gone Green by the Advent were also released as an Advent EP called Everything's Gone Green, featuring 4 mixes: Show Me Green, Green for Help, Green Gone Hard, and Electric Green. Again, I have no memory of any of these mixes. They're not very good. But I bought them because, that's what I do. Dangle a thing in front of me with the words New Order on it, and I probably will have bought it in those days, because New Order were, in the top 3 or 4 bands. Still are, of course, but in a completely different way. Now, I never thought that I could spend 20 minutes talking about how bad New Order remix is when I've got all these solo things that I need to talk about. So effectively, New Order were dead. And 1996, we ushered in the new year, and I had no idea. Were they working on new material? Not a clue. Was Bernard working with electronic? Yes, he was, because there was a documentary called, I think something like My Prozac Week, with Bernard filming himself for a week recording new electronic material whilst also taking Prozac. And the first fruits of the material from the second electronic album came in the form of Forbidden City, a guitar-led song that was certainly the heaviest, rockiest, most guitar-y thing that Bernard had recorded since probably Way of Life in 1986. It's okay. It's not amazing. It's pretty much a step down from Get the Message, Getting Away with It, and that's probably why it didn't sell so much. Also, of course, and I said before, it was a really, really difficult time to be a fan of New Order, because 1996, Pulp, Blur, Suede, Oasis were everywhere in the UK, and the Spice Girls. New Order were yesterday's men. Electronic were, even by the words of the EMI label rep that I spoke to at the time, they were a legacy act. So we bought, EMI had signed Electronic, and although they may not have said so directly, they said that they did so because the guy used to be in New Order. He's definitely going to sell some records, and there we are. That's kind of what the label thought. So Forbidden City is not a great track. The CD single has 2 B-sides. One is Imitation of Life, which is really good, and has later been remixed by Carl Bartos to be a track on his album Off the Record, called, I think, Without a Trace of Emotion, but I could be wrong. And then there's also a new track called A New Religion as well. I first heard the last minute of this on a radio at a friend's house, and I'm like, it's new electronic? And I was like, and I listened to it, and I was like, that's Bernard. That's not very good. And I haven't changed my mind since then. Forbidden City is not a great track. But the follow-up for that was this, the second electronic album, Raise the Pressure. Now, I think it's not, unintentional to have a cherub on the cover of Technique and a cherub on the cover of Raise the Pressure. This is a promotional CD of it, which features the same mixes as the commercial, but it has an exclusive photo on the back that you couldn't get anywhere else. But I couldn't wait, because it had been 3.5 years since I'd heard a new song, or a new electronic song. I wanted to hear this, and so I bought a promo copy of it. It was also released on vinyl, which is staggeringly expensive. I didn't buy the vinyl version because I didn't have the space, and I didn't have the money, and I didn't have the inclination, and who bought vinyl anyway? Well, if only I knew now what I knew then. And here comes the second electronic album, Raise the Pressure. And as I've said before, I think I changed the sleeve around because I didn't like the picture of a cherub on the front. This felt to me more like an electronic album cover, just a standard bit with text. It felt quite Peter Saville. And one of the things about electronic records, New Order records, Monaco records, is that they feel like you're holding a mass-produced work of art. I love this album. It is so good, and it was so out of time. The world wasn't waiting for the guy from the Smiths and the guy from the New Order to make a record with the guy from Kraftwerk that was high-paced, high-octane, bleepy bloopy Italian piano disco house music. I was, but then I wasn't necessarily buying Supergrass albums at the time. More for me. or not, as the case might be. I definitely wasn't buying menswear rubbish. Now, Raise the Pressure is a great album. I love it to bits. I listened to it the other week, actually, because I listened to all of the albums that I talk about before I talk about them. To go, is it still good? Has it aged well, or has it aged like bread or milk? This has aged like a fine wine. At the time, it was out of time, and now it is timeless. And if you like New Order, if you like electronic, and you're going, I want to listen to more songs, I want to hear new songs. If you haven't heard this, buy this, give it a spin. It's probably 20p on Amazon for the CD. It's probably £200 on Discogs for the album. It's just a brilliantly unloved Italian pop disco classic from the 90s, and of course everyone else wanted to listen to Liam and Noel and the Parker Monkeys singing songs about knees up Mother Brown, we sound like Oasis, call blimey governor, which so therefore meant that this record was pretty much dead on arrival. In the same way, also, by the way, electronic didn't tour. Johnny Marr didn't want to tour. He wanted to stay at home after spending probably the first 10 years of his rock and roll life touring the world constantly with the Smiths and also with the Pretenders and he wanted to spend some time at home being a parent, and completely understand that, by the way. I also think that actually that probably was really good for Bernard's health. Bernard was by his own admission, the kind of person that perhaps suffered the slings and arrows of outrageous hangovers more than other people in New Order, and so the temptation is always to go and cane it after a gig, and that's not always healthy. So not touring was probably a really good move for him and his health. But what it meant was I hadn't seen a member of New Order play live by the time I got to the age of 24, and that was soon going to change. The second single from Raise the Pressure was released in 2 commercial formats. It is For You. Here is the promotional CD of For You, and it was a re-recording of the song. So it was an alternate recording. It wasn't the same recording as on the album. It's very slightly different. If you listen to the 2 back to back, you can tell slightly different changes in the various guitar licks and things like that. There's a CD single of For You, which is backed with 2 new songs, All That I Need and I Feel Alright. They're both pretty good, not amazing, but definitely B-sides. And a second CD single, which is backed with factory era rarities. So it's a DNA mix of Get the Message, Disappointed and Free Will on there. And that, I think they promoted it by appearing on TFI Friday. There was a third single that was released from the album. It's called Second Nature, and 2 CD singles, a promotional CD, and for the first time, I think, promo 12-inch of Second Nature as well. So Second Nature is a good mid-praise song. I prefer this cover because it has an air of mystery around it. This was released in January, 27th of January 1997, and it's the 3rd single to be taken from the Raise the Pressure album. It will follow both Forbidden City and For You by going top 20, and of course they're still selling to us the distinct and rare possibility of live dates for 1997, which of course never came to pass. Thanks, mate, for the broken promises. But we got 2 CD singles. Both of them feature Bernard smoking a fag on the front, so I don't like the cover art. This has a bunch of remixes on. This has a track called Turning Point and a remix of Feel Every Beat that was only previously on a 12-inch single. Again, it's a good single, not amazing. And as I said before, it got a vinyl issue, but only as a promotional 12-inch. With a couple of remixes that weren't on the CD, so a transatlantic dub and a sweet remix. Next one, this is the big one actually. This is really rare. Electronic's 4th single from the album, Until the End of Time. It wasn't released commercially. It was released as a very limited DJ promo, and they sold a couple of hundred through their mailing list. This is one of those couple of hundred of CDs. The last time I looked at it, this was something like £200 on Discogs, which is bizarre. It's not worth £200. It has 4 previously unheard remixes, a Fluffy Dice mix by Bernard Sumner, a K-Class classic mix, the Sweet Dub, and the Soulboy Collective 7-inch version. I have no memory of those last two tracks because they're not particularly good. But this was, the album was dead, the band wasn't touring, there was very little commercial interest in it. They pressed up some promo CDs and then they sold the rest. But if you sent a check into their management company for I think £5 plus £1.99 postage, so £6.99 postage. All these remixes are probably almost definitely on YouTube, which is probably the best place for them, come to think of it. But all was not yet lost, because the summer of 1997 saw the re-emergence, blinking into the light, of Peter Hook. And Peter Hook had formed a band called Monaco, which was formed from the ashes of his previous band, Revenge. Monaco released 2 albums. This is the first single, What Do You Want From Me? And I think Peter Hook's mother listened to a lot of the radio, because she rang him up and said, "Have you finally fired Bernard?" She says, may have asked, "Have you got a new singer?" Around about the time that In Between Days came out. Did the same thing with this, and it's like, no, Mum, I've got a new band called Monaco, which is David Potts from Revenge and Peter Hook, and it sounds like a really super hyper poppy version of New Order. Monaco were the first of the New Order related bands that I saw live at the Wolverhampton Wolfram Hall in, I think, September 1997. They played the whole of the album minus one song. I think they played a B-side, and they finally encored with the first Joy Division song I ever saw performed live, which was Failures, which was incredible, because I never thought I'd get to see a member of Joy Division playing Joy Division songs. I never thought I'd get to see a member of New Order play New Order songs, because as soon as I got into the band, they stopped touring, and I started having to buy records and going to see other bands instead. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't like New Order as much as I wanted to, because I'd been denied the opportunity to experience them live. But as I've said before, that will change. Monaco are a great band, and they did 2 albums. One is called Music for Pleasure. If you're going to buy Music for Pleasure, there are 2 versions of this album. One has a track called Under the Stars on it. The UK edition of the album doesn't have Under the Stars on. The reason being is the melody from Under the Stars sounds very, very much like the theme from Mrs. Merton. And the Mrs. Merton show hadn't been on hadn't been on US television, so they could turn that song into Under the Stars. But in the UK, if they'd have put the theme from Mrs. Merton on the album, perhaps people would have thought differently about it, which means I had to buy the US import to get one previously unreleased song. I thought it was because it sounded too much like a New Order song, actually, because the end bass run sounds like the end of the last track on side 1 of Brotherhood. I was wrong when I saw the footage from the Mrs. Merton show. But Music for Pleasure is a fantastic album. Really, if you wanted New Order and you missed Hookie's bass, this is brilliant. Absolutely. If you only have the New Order stuff and you want to hear something that sounds like New Order, get this. There has not been a bad New Order solo album, by the way, I should point out. There was a second single that was released just before Music for Pleasure came out. It's called Sweet Lips. There's a promo 12-inch. There's a CD single, which has got some remixes on. Those remixes, they're bad. And this one, I think, has got... this is the one that's got remixes. These remixes, they're bad. Don't buy them, okay? But the B-side is called Shattered. It's a great brooding instrumental thingammy-doodah. And Sweet Lips also got a promotional 12-inch release. Here's a double 12-inch of Sweet Lips. It's all backed with bad remixes, and I can't remember anything about them at all. But using the same remix people that the New Order have used, presumably because they thought that somehow it's the remix that makes the band not sound like the band that sells the records by the band, and that doesn't make sense. Here's a promo CD of Music for Pleasure with some alternate artwork on, by the way. This is the 10-track UK version. The album is really, really good. It's got one of my favourite songs of all time on it, which is called Shine. It's also got a track called Junk On, which I saw them close every show that I saw. I saw Monaco, I think, 3 times. They played Junk at every show, and it was monster. It was like 10 minutes long, and it was just all the things that I wanted. So I was over the moon when they played it. Final single from the Monaco album is called Shine, and this features a track called Coming Around Again, and a radio session version of Tender. But that's not all. 1998 saw a very, very, very unusual piece of news, and for this I'm going to have to take us up. I subscribe to a thing called the Ceremony Mailing List, which is a very, very early kind of email mailing list where fans of the band all joined and everyone exchanged messages, kind of like a very early version of a bulletin board, but every message came into your email box. And I'd heard the announcement that New Order were going to play the Phoenix Festival at Stratford-upon-Avon. They were going to headline it on the 18th of July 1998, and apparently they'd been offered £250,000 by a promoter called Vince Power to headline the Phoenix Festival, the band rising from the ashes. And unlike most other times when Rob just went no or up your bum, Rob said, come on guys, we need to have a chat and we need to tell them once and for all, have New Order split or not? And the conversation went, that might be fun. And Hooky was like, you know me, Bernard, I'm up for anything, I'll do it. And Stephen and Gillian were on board, and then all of a sudden New Order had reformed and they were headlining a festival in the UK. And I had no idea if I was going to be able to get to see it, because they didn't sell day tickets for Phoenix. Phoenix was in a deserted airfield, miles outside of a town called Stratford-upon-Avon, Shakespeare country. And I was like, oh God, I can't even see New Order when they're playing near me, because I can't afford to pay for a 4-day ticket for a festival. I only want to see one act. I didn't want to see the other bands that were playing. You know, I didn't want to see Neil Young. Fuck that. He's awful. I wanted to see New Order. And I thought maybe New Order are just going to be a band that I never ever get to see live. Except probably around about late June 1998. I got home from work on a Friday and an email had just landed into the Ceremony mailing list with a transcript of a very, very small paragraph that appeared in the Manchester Evening News. New Order will be playing an exclusive one-off show at the Manchester Apollo on Thursday, July the 16th, 1998. Tickets are on sale now from the box office. Here is the number. And without even thinking, I had enough money on my credit card to buy 4 tickets. I rang up. I booked 4 tickets because I knew I was going and I knew people that wanted to go. I booked 4 tickets. I was like, quite literally, I was like, yeah, New Order now, please, shut up and take my money. And then I was going to go and get to see my favourite band play in Manchester, play a secret show, a warm-up show at the Manchester Apollo, where they'd previously played as Joy Division. And I was going to go. You know, I used to think that the day would never come. And it was all the things that I wanted it to be. So I rang up my friend James and I said, James, New Order are playing Manchester. I've used up my maximum ticket allocation. If you want, ring and get... And he rang and got one. And then my friends Rob and Giles and my brother Graham also came along, and we all packed into the back of the car, 5 people, drove up to Manchester, parked somewhere, and we were like, is Manchester as bad as everyone makes out? No idea. And then we decided that we were going to, you know, hopefully we were going to come out of the show and the car won't have been, you know, set on fire or put in a cannon and shot to the moon. And I remember I couldn't get the day off work after, but I was 24, 25. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to go and see my favourite band in Manchester. I'm going to get home at shit o'clock. I'm going to go to work tomorrow. I'm going to feel shit. And you know what? I don't care. I've waited long enough. Work can wait. And I went to work the next day and I was terrible. And I probably stank of booze and I didn't give a shit, and quite rightly so. Because I don't even remember why I wasn't allowed to take annual leave that day. They probably wanted me to attend a really important meeting. It wasn't as important as New Order, because what I can remember is we got tickets for the front row upstairs on the balcony, and Graham and I went downstairs. I think I was wearing a U2 t-shirt and he was wearing a Depeche Mode t-shirt, and we got talking to the security guard as we walked past. And we talked to him for a couple of minutes about things, and he was like, don't you guys think you better go in? And we're like, actually, yeah, we should. And so we walked in downstairs without standing tickets, because he didn't bother checking our tickets, and we got into the standing section of the Manchester Apollo to see a gig that I thought would never ever happen. And probably around about 9 o'clock at night, Alan Wise, the band's compere, came on stage and he introduced those lovely ladies and gentlemen from Warsaw or Joy Division. and they came on, and New Order played Regret, and I couldn't believe it. I was in Manchester seeing New Order play Regret, and I was like, this is my place. There is no other place in the universe I want to be. This is my home. This is where I am. This is how I feel. This is beautiful. And then they played songs that they'd not played since the days of Joy Division. They played Touched by the Hand of God next, which they hadn't played for over 10 years. They played the third song, I think it was Isolation by Joy Division, for the first time since Joy Division had split. And they didn't introduce it, they just played it. And it was a completely new remix that they'd put together. And I was like, they're playing fucking Isolation. And then they played Ceremony. And then the next song was Heart and Soul, which again I think they barely played, and I'm like, I'm watching New Order play Heart and Soul, by Joy Division, that they've not played in 18 years. They've not played it since Ian died. And then the sixth song I think was Atmosphere, and I was like, oh my god, this is just like, my mind was blown. If someone could draw a map of my mind during that gig, it would have been spaghetti. It would have just been like, and then the next song was Paradise, which was off Brotherhood. Again, they hadn't played that since 1987. And then I think the next song after that was Confusion, which again they hadn't played since about 1987. And then it was Bizarre Love Triangle, and they used the opening from the 12-inch mix. And the opening from the 12-inch mix, that's the thing that got me in. I was listening to Substance as a kid, 10 years before, with a copy that I'd borrowed from Birmingham Library. And there was this huge intro to Bizarre Love Triangle. I'm like, oh my god, I found my new favourite band. Like when you meet somebody and you go, I found my next ex-wife. It was like, I found my new favourite band. All other bands, fuck off. This is my band. And then they played Bizarre Love Triangle, and that was the song. And I was like, my god, this is everything I ever wanted it to be. And then it went quiet, and we just heard the introduction to this new track. Nobody knew what it was. I mean, if you bought a remix 12-inch 4 years ago, yes, you'd know what it was, but I didn't know what it was. And there was a bit where it suddenly breaks down, and there's this new keyboard line comes in. I'm like, they're playing the Perfecto mix of True Faith live. And I was like, I just remember I was just like, as soon as that song finished, I went to my brother, who was right next to me, and I went, this is the best fucking night of my life. And it probably was, actually. It's probably in my top 3 gigs of all time. Easily top 4. And I've been to, something like 3,000 shows. And then it was like, right, that stopped. Temptation. Blue Monday. Run. Love Will Tear Us Apart. And then In a Lonely Place. I'm like, my fucking god, man. That was... I'd seen New Order, and that was something which I thought would never happen. It was like someone said, when you get to grow up, you can get to, hold a girl's hand. You can get to be in a stable and loving relationship. You can have cats. You can be happy. You can see New Order. It was kind of that level of achievement. I was like, oh my god. And then 6 weeks later, they played the Reading Festival. And it came out on a DVD. And that was, for a huge amount of time, my third favourite gig of all time. New Order at the Manchester Apollo, number 1. 9 Inch Nails at Birmingham Goldwyn's, number 2. 9 Inch Nails at the Reading Festival in 1998, number 3. 9 Inch Nails, very, very good. New Order at Reading, almost as good, like 99.5% as good as New Order at Manchester. And it was everything. There was just this huge wave of euphoria that kind of just spread from the front of the field to the back. You can see it in the 24-hour party people film as well. It's just like everyone, okay, Garbage headlined, but New Order won. New Order were not... Garbage may have been the last band to play, but New Order headlined that show. And it was 70 minutes. And I just remember I was during the middle of Temptation, and I was so tired, because there were 30,000 people around me, and they were all bouncing like, little pogo sticks. And we were all full of lager and almost definitely drugs. And, there were lasers, and there was Blue Monday, and there was Temptation, and True Faith, and Bizarre Love Triangle. I'm like, this is where I want to be for the rest of my life, is having experiences as good as this. And I know I won't get experiences as good, but I got to see it. And I was like, it doesn't matter how good it looks on DVD. Being there is kind of like reading a newspaper article versus witnessing the birth of the universe. It was, it was real. and there was just this incredible wave of euphoria that just moved all through the field. Something that I've very, very, very rarely seen at shows. You know, I saw it in on a couple of shows on the Morning Glory tour by Oasis. I saw it on the first Morrissey tour in 1991. I saw it again on the New Order shows in 1998. It's this wave of euphoria where everything in life suddenly made sense. And I was like, I used to think that the day would never come where I would get to see New Order and they would get to be everything and more that I thought they were going to be. And, you know, they're still absolutely fantastic live in a very, very different way. And Peter Hook in his solo right is very good live as well. And there's just something about that moment. It was like, just like you can't bottle lightning like that. It was just a unique moment where everything happened, and there are so few gigs where it happens. And you know, if you've been to even one show that good in the rest of your life, you are incredibly lucky. And I have been incredibly lucky to see at least two of the best New Order shows of all time. I'm going to wrap up here because I'm running out of time. I've still got to talk about the second Monaco album and the third electronic album and the second other two album and the other shows that New Order played. But that is going to be another episode, I think, because there's there's no better place to end than here, really. You know, when we got to the end of the Reading show, they played Worlds in Motion for the first time, and they're there with 30,000 people, and there's at least 20 people in a pit playing air bass slung down below their shoulders, and you're just below their ankles, and the whole crowd is singing the sequencer line to Temptation. You know, that's the type of thing that you can't predict. A crowd just does it, and you get swept away in the moment, and it was incredible. Yeah, man. I'm a lucky bastard. Not going to pretend that I'm not. I am. Yeah, I absolutely am, and I have been. And thank you for listening to me boast about going to see a New Order show. In the meantime, I'm going to wrap up here. You look after yourselves. I will post a link to the video of Reading down there. Put comments in if you like. I will catch up with you some other time. But in the meantime, stay beautiful, and I will see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye.